What's up, guys? It's time to talk some trade rumors. The finals is coming to an end between Tampa and Colorado, meaning it's NHL draft time, and then after we have NHL free agency. But during this time, we also have trades that are coming up, and today we're going to be discussing a lot of players that have been a part of the trade rumors. The last couple of weeks during the playoffs and potentially may get traded during the offseason. So starting off with our first one, the most surprising name because of how young he is and how talented he is, Alex Debrincat of the Chicago Blackhawks, a guy who, in our opinion, we feel that it's a guy that you should build around in terms of a rebuild, but yet it seems like their new general manager sees otherwise, that he's not willing to keep him around for the rebuild, and they want to get rid of him. Kirby Dach, which is another name that we're going to talk about. Jonathan Taves, potentially, if they can move his contract, and Patrick Kane as well.
Well, I think for the Brinket, I'd be very surprised if they moved him. But I know that there's been a little bit of internal, conversations between the Blackhawks and a few teams in the NHL about, potentially moving him if the deal is right. And I know that Chicago is looking for a first round pick after what happened with Columbus last year, obviously losing their first round pick in the Seth Jones trade. Um, I think the only reasonable explanation if they want to go get a first round pick, and I think a team that would make sense could potentially be the New Jersey Devils, because I think a guy like Debrincat, maybe for the second overall pick, not necessarily just Debrincat, but there could definitely be a team there or a deal there that could be done if Chicago decides to go that route. But I think to me personally, you don't trade a guy like Alex Debrincat. He's a 40 goal scorer. He's done it a few times in his career. He's still relatively young. There's Kirby Dach as well that they drafted as well, that he's had his moments and he's kind of struggled as well. But I think for Chicago, these are two guys that you should be building your team around and not necessarily moving. However, we don't really know what the plan is for Chicago. There's been rebuild, there's been retool, but Patrick Kane and Taves have one more year left on their deals. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Blackhawks. To me, though, if they had to move one guy, I think it makes more sense to move on from veteran guys compared to the younger guys. But the brick has been talked on the market a lot, so we'll see.
Yeah, like about the Brinket and Kirby Dach. I think another name too is Strom. I know the Chicago Blackhawks might part ways with him. Kirby Dach, I would see moving on more so than the Brinkat, just because like he hasn't been doing the greatest, and maybe a change of scenery might help him out a little bit, and might he might provide something else for another team, or maybe there's another team with a younger player that maybe wants to have the same that's in the same scenario as him and probably needs a change of scenery too. So like a 1-for-1 swap, I could see happening. But when it comes to the Brinkat, I think I'm not too sure where I got where I heard this information from. I'm not sure if it was TSN or Sportsnet, but I think what the asking price is 2 first-round picks and a top prospect, and I think 2 other pieces, if I'm not mistaken. Like they're looking for five.
Well, I mean, he's an elite player, right? And so he's a 40 goal scorer, like I mentioned before. I think it makes a lot of sense that if you trade a guy like DeBrincat, you're going to get a lot back for him. I know that they're looking for a first round pick, like I mentioned before. To me, the only one there's a few teams that I think he could go to, but I think if there's one team that is looking to move their first round pick, it's a team like the New Jersey Devils, and they have the second overall pick, which does become enticing. So I could see that as a potential team to be after Alex DeBrincat. I'm not saying a trade like that's going to happen, but it could make a lot of sense for New Jersey if they decide to go that route as well, because they're already getting an established 40 goal scorer who can score and help their team and play with Jack Hughes. So
I mean,
Yeah,
Chris is right in terms of the asking price. LeBron was writing an article for the Athletic. He said that the Chicago Blackhawks want a younger player slash a high pick slash top prospect of return. So it looks like it's three pieces, maybe more, like Chris was saying, maybe five. And also the Los Angeles Kings, who have been looking for a top winger for about a year now. They've been linked to guys like Philip Forsberg, who is a UFA as well. The to sign with them. They've been looking for a top winger to close up their top six because, I mean, they did get Arvidsson last offseason. They have Philip Danault as a top centerman as well. They have Kopitar in the top six, and I think they want to add one more veteran piece in the top six. And I think I mean, the Debrincat at his age and what he's able to bring to a team like the Los Angeles Kings that are on the rise, they're almost done with their rebuild in my eyes. To be honest, I think it would be a fantastic fit there.
Well, here's the thing though, is that no matter where the Debrincat goes, it's gonna cause the team that's getting him to lose a lot of players, and they'll probably just like. I honestly, I'd say that they probably stay in the same place that they already are. Rather, they get him or they don't have him. Like the team I'm thinking that could probably potentially get him are the Ottawa Senators with all the amount of
Well,
like
LA
prospects.
makes sense too.
Yeah, but for LA, who are you gonna give up? You're gonna give up a Quinton Byfield kind of guy. So there goes your top future
I
prospect.
mean, he hasn't been really working out. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries, and like you were saying, Chris, before, a change of scenery. You know, I know Byfield was drafted second overall, but I mean, Kirby Dach was drafted in the first round as well, a top 10 draft pick, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe there's a change of scenery trade that happens there. And another guy that we're going to talk about is Kakko, who hasn't been working out the New York Rangers, and there's been a lot of problems that have been occurring, especially during the recent playoff series between the Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, where he got scratched the last game of the series, and there was a lot of speculation on why he got scratched. So, I
So,
mean, this is going to be a very interesting offseason where you're going to see a lot of veterans on the move, but also a lot of young guys as
well,
well.
well, I think for Kakko, right? You brought up Kakko, and I think Kakko's an interesting case because I think that he's a player that hasn't. Obviously, we all know that he hasn't lived up to his potential in New York, and I think for him, this is a guy that does need a change of scenery, and I think a lot of teams in the NHL are going to be interested in acquiring Kakko. It's hard to predict where he's going to go because I think for the Rangers, it's going to be a question about like what the return is. But I think for Kakko, he needs to play on a team that's going to give him an opportunity to play in the top six. And I look at a few of the teams that missed out on the playoffs, and one team that I think, and I'm just throwing it out there, but I don't think it may not happen. I think a team like Buffalo could make a lot of sense for a guy like Kakko. The reason for that is because they're a team that took strides this season. They've got a good top six, but I think if they can add to that and add a guy like Kakko and maybe develop him in a way that can benefit him, he could be a really good player for them as well. I think in New York it's too crowded, right? That top six is too crowded. We've
I
seen
agree.
what's happened with Lafreniere as well, kind of playing on the third line. I think for the Rangers, if there's an opportunity to move a guy like Kakko, especially since they signed Kravtsov too. It allows them to get some assets back. And I think Kakko, although he may not live up to the second overall hype that he has, I still think he's got potential to be something in the NHL. I just think he needs to be given a chance on a top six. So I think a team that makes sense for me, at least in my eyes, could be a team like the Buffalo Sabres, but it depends on what the asking price is for a guy like Kakko if they decide to move him.
And I would throw in Detroit in the mix as well, because I
Yeah.
think a guy like Stevie Yzerman could really help rejuvenate his career, and they're really trying to establish a young core there. You did Nedeljkovic last offseason, which he's also in trade rumors as well, that they're willing to listen to offers, which in my opinion, if they could get a haul for him, that's fantastic. But he is relatively young. He was a Calder nominee last season. So moving on from him doesn't quite make any sense. If you're a very young team trying to compete for a playoff spot, they're in the process of a rebuild. You don't want to give up a young piece like that. But I mean, hey, if the offer is good, I know there's a lot of teams looking for goalies like Edmonton. Also, a team like Buffalo is looking for a goaltender. So there's things to look out there in terms of trade rumors. And also, you mentioned Buffalo. If people are saying, Patrick Kane's going to get dealt, right? The only suitable team for Kane would be his hometown team, Buffalo, because they have the cap space and they have the assets to make it work. So they could take on a guy like Patrick Kane's contract, and Buffalo's on the rise. And I've stated a couple of episodes ago, I think Buffalo will finish in their wild card spot this year if they get a number one goaltender and one more piece in the top six. And I think Patrick Kane would help.
I agree with that. I mean, look, you look at a team that I think they're a couple of superstars away from being a really good team. But I think that, again, they're a team that wants to get younger. They don't really have that star power. I know Tage Thompson took a step this season and he looked good. Dylan Cousins had a pretty good year. And we've obviously, if you follow the AHL a little bit, you've seen how good Peyton Krebs and JJ Peterka have been as well. And obviously Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen in net. But I don't think Buffalo is there just yet. However, they do need a couple of pieces. I think if they go to free agency and get a guy like Forsberg, it makes a lot of sense as well. They go get Patrick Kane, that could make sense as well. Like you said, they have the cap space. I just think that if it's a team that's looking, they're still kind of in the retool rebuild stage, and I think if they have to go for a guy like Kakko and the price is right, I could see a situation where that happens. They throw him into the top 6 role, and maybe he has a good season, kind of like the way Jeff Skinner did. Jeff Skinner was playing bad in Buffalo, and then change of coach, change of system, and he ended up scoring 30 goals this season. So there's definitely an opportunity there for for a guy like Kaapo Kakko if he does get traded, and I could see Buffalo as a team that could get his services if it makes a lot of sense for them. So I see that. I don't know what the asking price is for Kakko, but if it does, I would say him. One team that I would also move on for, one team that I would mention as well, or one player that I would mention as well that could make sense for a team like Buffalo is Kevin Fiala. Kevin Fiala has had a lot of talk in regards with Minnesota and their contract situation. As we know, Minnesota has no cap space at the moment. They're kind of limited on what they can do. So Kevin Fiala has been a guy that's been talked about, and I think he's a guy that a lot of teams in the NHL, if he becomes available, are going to be interested in. We've heard rumors about the Canadians. We've heard rumors about other teams in the NHL.
New Jersey is one of them
New
as
Jersey
well.
being one of them as well. So there's definitely something there, and I think Kevin Fiala for a team like Buffalo too makes a lot of sense. That's why I kind of brought it up in this conversation, because I think Buffalo could be big players in terms of getting a big free agent star to kind of join their team. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, when it comes to, for Kevin Fiala, I honestly do think that he does end up playing for the New Jersey Devils. I mean, it makes the most sense. I mean, the New Jersey Devils, I mean, they're willing to trade their second overall pick, and they would have to give up. I don't know. I mean, do you think I don't know, in your opinion, you think it's fair giving up the second overall pick straight up for Fiala?
I think Minnesota wins that deal. In my honest opinion.
Hands down, in my opinion.
I think
would be laughing
I don't think Kevin Fiala is worth the second. I'm not saying I'm saying that straight up for Kevin Fiala. I think Minnesota wins that deal. I think New Jersey. I think that second overall pick is way too valuable. I think Minnesota's going to have to add pieces to trade away a guy like Fiala for that second overall pick. And we know New Jersey's interested in defensemen too. They want a defenseman. They want a goalie as well. So there could be something there. And obviously we know Minnesota has a prospect goalie, but it doesn't really make sense.
I mean, they do need cap space. There's and with PK Subban leaving the New Jersey Devils, that's $9 million right off the cap right there. So I mean, I do, it would be pretty cool to see maybe two players going.
New Jersey have the cap space. I think Minnesota needs the cap space, right? Minnesota, I think a guy that could make sense too in that deal is Matt Dumba, maybe.
But that's what I was saying. Maybe that came out wrong. But
Minnesota's goal is to get assets, but also create cap space, because they're gonna have to sign guys like Matt Boldy in the future. And Matt Boldy right now is playing some great hockey. You have also Kirill Kaprizov, who they just recently signed, which took a huge hit for their cap space. So they're gonna have to make room if they want to be a competitive team and add pieces, or maintain the structure in the core that they have in Minnesota. They're gonna have to part ways with some pieces. And in terms of New Jersey, another guy that's been in rumors right now is Jesper Bratt. He's negotiating a contract, but there's also been rumors that they're willing to listen to offers on Bratt. Bratt was their best player. If I'm not mistaken, he passed the 70 point plateau this year. He was their best point per game player. Obviously, a huge contribution to his success was Jack Hughes, who had a very underrated season, in my opinion, a very good season with that. And I think New Jersey is another team on the rise that's willing to make moves, and they have cap space like Buffalo. But another guy they've been also linked to, Josh Anderson. Are they willing to give up the second round pick for a guy like Josh Anderson, a lot of New Jersey Devil fans are not too happy about that when they heard that. They're gonna have to work around that. Obviously, Montreal would have to add more pieces. But I mean, New Jersey, it seems like they're really, really hungry to add a top
I'm
six winger.
Here's the thing, though. When it comes to Josh Anderson for the second overall pick, one for one, obviously, no one in their right mind would do that. But I do think that if Josh Anderson, Hoffman, and maybe like a great defensive prospect is packaged all three together, I'm pretty sure I would see that being a good deal.
You have to throw a first round pick in there too.
Not a first round pick, maybe a high second.
And
You
a
have to throw
rumor
you
is
have to
though,
throw- New Jersey doesn't trade. New
Because
Jersey doesn't
you're
make sense.
getting a great fast player like Josh Anderson, who, let's
No.
face it, he could score. He's capable of scoring 30 goals, and you're going to be playing with Jack Hughes, which
I would say Anderson's capable of scoring 20 to 25 goals max.
I think
He's a power forward. I give him credit for that. His hitting and his skating ability is very, very good for the NHL level. But a 30 goal scorer, I don't really agree with that.
and he's on a good contract too. A lot of people are saying that he's not worth the contract that he's getting paid. I think it's fantastic for the way he plays, his speed, his aggressiveness, the way he passes the puck is great. And for a big guy like that, it's very rare in the NHL.
Maybe now, but the
I
last 2-3 years of his contract, if he's dealing with injuries, it's not going to be that good. He's in it fall into the same category as guys as Savard and Clarkson, Loophole, guys like that who were power forwards, who were good players, and concussions, shoulder injuries, knee injuries, all that caught up to them, and their contracts are horrible, and they have to be moved to teams like Arizona and stuff, or Columbus.
Well,
Back in the day.
I don't think Josh Anderson's at that point just yet, and I think him and Hoffman, if they were to be packaged together and sent to New Jersey, I think New Jersey would get an even bigger boost on the power play. They were pretty decent this
You
year.
would have to throw in a prospect like Matthias Norlinder, which I think
that's who I think is going to be the.
I'm going to be honest. My trade proposal, if it does, which I don't think it will happen, I don't think Montreal is getting the second overall pick. But if they had to,
I don't think so.
To me, this is how it is, and you're going to disagree with me. You might not, but it goes something like this: it's Josh Anderson, the first round pick, which is 26th overall, potentially even Jeff Petry at 50% retained,
that's
and then
another guy.
piece.
It's in rumors,
and then another piece.
It's
and
no
people
secret.
might look at me and say you're crazy, but look, like that's what it takes to get a second overall pick. Is you need to give up assets. Anderson and Hoffman doesn't get you that. It doesn't even get you a first round pick. I think, or a middle first round pick like a
Hoffman. I would say
pick.
at most right now Hoffman is at most worth
like
a third round pick.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Third pick for Hoffman, no way. Dude, the power play specialist that
does nothing else. That does absolutely nothing else.
His defensive game is very weak, and he doesn't have even a little bit of an ability to go back and chase the puck. And especially the amount of giveaways he had this season, even with St. Louis, he wasn't benched for no reason. And he would have been benched on Montreal if Montreal had better players or enough players. But because they dealt with so many injuries this year and they traded away a couple of their players, you had no choice to play Hoffman, try to increase his value. But Hoffman had a bad year, and he was better under Ducharme. He was one of the few better players that were better under Ducharme than St. Louis. He struggled under St. Louis, and I think he's gone this offseason.
One guy that I want to talk about really quickly, and we didn't mention him, but he's been the biggest topic of trade rumors since the beginning, since the deadline. And to me, it's JT Miller. This is a guy that I think is going to get interest from a lot of teams in the NHL. We already know that there's a lot of interest in JT Miller, right? There was rumors about him potentially going back to New York. There's rumors about him going to New Jersey.
One right here.
Ricardo in the comments just mentioned him to the Capitals. There's a few other possibilities for JT Miller. I think the Vancouver is going to move him this offseason. He's got he's making $5.25 million for the next year, and after that, he's an unrestricted free agent. This is a guy that's going to get a really good haul for him when he gets traded. And I think that he's probably, if we talk about the biggest names or the ones that are most likely to get dealt, I think JT Miller is one that's most likely to get dealt. And I know we keep talking about New Jersey, but it's because they're the biggest team and I think the most active team right now in terms of
a lot of cap space.
Yeah, and a lot of what's being talked about too. And, there's a guy that we didn't really mention that I'm going to mention now too, but Brock Besser's another one that's kind of been in trade rumors. And so I think that there's been a lot of interest in Vancouver in terms of their players and their prospects and kind of what they're looking to do there. I think JT Miller's a guy that is going to get a lot, but I would not be surprised if they move on from Brock Besser. And again, I think New Jersey, I think we've thrown New Jersey in every single player that's been available, but it's just because New Jersey's literally, I think, the team that has the most assets to kind of make one of these deals work. It's not a question of like, oh, we think that, but I just personally think that if there's a big player getting traded, chances are they're heading to New Jersey. Like, it just seems like that's where the destination's headed, in my opinion.
And Ricardo's comment's interesting because we all know Nicholas Backstrom is out for the year. He's dealing with a hip recovery, and it's very hard to recover from that. Not many players have recovered from that fully. They never really do, and they play a couple games. They realize they're never in the same shape, and then they're forced to retire. So do I really think Backstrom's ever going to play a game again? It's more likely that he plays a couple games and he falls into the same footsteps like other guys before him and decides to retire because he's not capable of playing at the NHL level due to his condition. So a guy like Miller, who's very useful on the wings and at center, but primarily he would be put as a centerman on the Washington Capitals. I think that would be a fantastic fit for Washington. He's still not that old. If I'm not mistaken, he's 29 years old, or 28.
Yeah,
And
29.
okay, perfect. He's 29 years old, and what he's capable of offering a team, I think he's very underrated in my opinion. I think it's a guy that, will cost a lot of assets, like you were saying before, but it's someone that would be very, very useful for a team like Washington that wants to continue competing as long as Alexander Ovechkin is still on that team. So he has the age that makes sense. He fits that mold of that core that they have. Everyone's in their late 20s, early 30s, and I think that would be a fantastic fit as well. For
What do
them.
you give up? What do you guys give up for JT? If you have to make a JT Miller trade, what do you give? Going to whichever team, what would you give up to get him?
I'm the GM of the Vancouver Canucks. First of all, I doubt that they'll make a deal with the Washington Capitals because I think, besides the two goaltenders that they have, there's not really much that they could give. But if I'm making that deal with them specifically, when does Alexander Ovechkin's contract end? In like 2-3
Oh,
years?
5 years, but they re-signed him last year, so he's still got 4 more years after.
I would ask for a first round pick with no conditions and a few other picks of the years after he retires, because I know that they'll finish in dead last by the time he's gone. So if I have to make a deal, it would be for like very, very long term.
But they can trade picks. I think they can trade picks within 4 years of each other. So you'd have to I think for later picks it wouldn't be able to happen because I think they're only allowed to trade within 3 years or 4 years, I believe, and that's how it works.
I would probably take the latest ones. Honestly, I don't even think this year they'll be as good without Nick Backstrom there. But
Unless he's replaced, I mean, that's why they would get a guy like Miller.
Yeah, but who are you gonna give up for Miller?
I mean, look, right now
that's
we know that
question.
And Samson, they don't need a goalie; they have a goalie already.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the most likeliest spot to go to Washington, but a team that does need a goalie is New Jersey. They need a goalie. So, I mean, we all know that New Jersey.
New Jersey needs everything. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. But I mean, look, Samsonov or Vanacek, they're both RFAs currently. One of them is going to go. There's no way that they're okay to play this 1A, 1B system they've been playing for the last 2-3 years. They both want to be starting goaltenders. I think that's everyone's goal in the NHL. As a goaltender, they all want to be a starter. They want to prove themselves. And I think both guys are capable of being starters. So one of them is going to stay. The other one's going to be traded. And it all depends on the Capitals, who they want to keep, and also who's willing to sign a more affordable contract for them as well.
What's interesting with Samsonov and Vanacek, right, is their stats are kind of weird. Like if you look at Samsonov, the last 2 seasons, he's kind of struggled in the regular season, but Samsonov had a really good playoffs, right? And so because he had a really good playoffs, there's a question mark like, okay, maybe he's starting to finally find his game. And then you look at Vanacek, and he had a really good regular season, and he's been consistent over the last 2 years, right? 908 save percentages in both years. But then you look at his playoff stats, and they're not impressive at all. And so I think if you're the Caps, you have to make a decision here, right? You have 2 goalies, one's 26, one's 25. you have to make a decision in terms of which one you're going to move. I think they keep. I don't think they trade both, like you said. I think they trade one. I think for me, based on everything we've learned and everything we've seen, I think Samsonov gets moved. And the reason why is because there was a lot of issues with Samsonov in Washington during the year, and there was a lot of conflict and stuff too. Even during the COVID year too, there was issues with him. So I think that he needs a change of scenery, and I think that they like Vanacek more. And I think that Samsonov, there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested. You talked about him wanting to be a starting goalie. I think he's going to have to go to a team and prove himself again. But, we talked about it 2 days ago when we were talking about Philly, that they needed a goalie to complement Carter Hart. I think a goalie like Samsonov makes sense in that situation. Maybe he goes to Philly and complements Carter Hart. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think there's other teams too. The Maple Leafs are a team that need a goalie, and they might not go for Campbell. Maybe that's a destination that he can go to. There's a few other teams as well, the Oilers, the Sabres. Chicago is another one too that, if you want to have a starting goalie, you get a young goalie and Ilya Samsonov, it could work. But in terms of that, I think if there's one guy that likely gets traded, I think it's definitely Samsonov. I don't think they move on from
look,
Vanacek.
a lot of Capital fans are going to disagree with that because they're going to be like, hey, look, that's the past. And Samsonov had a fantastic playoff
Yeah,
performance against the Florida Panthers. It wasn't his fault why they lost, right? So now it creates a whole new debate, Vanacek or Samsonov. And I think Samsonov would be a perfect fit on a team like New Jersey, a team like Edmonton. We all know that Mike Smith, there's a high possibility that he's going to retire. Koskinen, he left already. As soon as they got eliminated, he signed the contract in Europe. I'm not too sure where exactly. I think it was the Swedish league. But like Edmonton needs a goalie badly. And going back to what you were answering before, because I didn't get a chance to say my proposal for JT Miller. Vancouver needs defense badly, but I think they would also love to get their hands on a top 15 first round pick. So I would say go for a first round pick in the top 15 this year and go for a defensive prospect for JT Miller. Maybe also add another pick or something. But I mean, that's the main goal. Add a solid defensive prospect and get a top 15 pick in this year's draft for JT Miller.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that there's definitely.
I know we don't have much time left, but because it's about to rain here too, I'm doing it outside because I'm a weather. But Pierre-Luc Dubois is a name that is getting thrown out there too. I've been hearing a few rumors that Montreal might be interested, or so who knows? Maybe is Calgary's pick really worth Pierre-Luc Dubois? Maybe with package deal. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that, again, like you look at Winnipeg, they finished, they had the 14th pick, right? Winnipeg, chances are they're going to want a first-round pick for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that's worth a mid-round pick. There's a few teams that I think could be very interesting as well. We talk about teams that need goal scoring or stuff like that. I think Dallas is a team that could be interesting with the 18th overall pick. Maybe they try to move that for a guy like Dubois. I'm just throwing things out. I haven't really heard much on Dubois. I heard
we heard like once, and that's it.
I heard a little bit about Montreal and I think Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. There was a rumor about that too. But I've heard a little
sense
bit
if Malkin walks, though.
Malkin's walking 100%.
Yeah.
And Letang.
Yeah, they want pay raises, and Pittsburgh can't afford both.
So I think if Pierre-Luc Dubois needs to get traded, I think it could be to a team that's kind of in the mid first round. Maybe they can move him there. That's if Winnipeg wants to do that. But that one, I think it's a little bit more unlikely. I don't think they move on from Dubois because they did trade Laine for him, and I think they believe in him, and Dubois had a good year this year. So I don't know what Winnipeg's plan is trying to do. Honestly.
Right now,
very confusing.
All signs are pointing that Barry Trotz is going to sign there because you have Bruce Cassidy who goes to Vegas, you have Tortorella who goes to Philadelphia, you have Paul Maurice who goes to Florida. So now there's not many options. Barry Trotz is from Winnipeg. I think everything's pointing towards him going there. And we already know that Blake Wheeler is not happy with the team. He stated that in his press conference. So was Paul Stastny. Paul Stastny is probably going to walk away as a UFA. And Blake Wheeler has been on the decline. And he's willing to consider a trade and to move his no movement clause. So I mean, look, changes are coming in Winnipeg as well, so that's another name to look out for as well. And you were talking about Columbus before. I mean, because you're associated to Dubois, even though he's in Winnipeg, but it brought me to the whole trade that
Well, I mentioned
happened
Laine.
last
That's what.
year, which was Patrick Laine, who was part of the Dubois trade, who's not even close to signing a contract with the Blue Jackets. And it's been rumors now that they were supposed to trade him at the deadline. Then their general manager stated that's false. It's not going to happen. We want to keep him here. But you already know how Liney is. He's been connected to teams like New Jersey in the past, Los Angeles, teams that want top six forwards, teams that are willing to pay a lot of money. And we know Columbus seems to be kind of stingy with their money, and they like trading away players once they want pay raises. We saw that with Panarin, we saw that with Duchesne, and we saw that with Bobrovsky as well.
Yeah.
Another RFA would be Ethan Bear, who was
Reconnect.
given permission to talk to other teams because they're not close on a deal. You look at Carolina's defensive core; they're stacked. They don't need a guy like Ethan Bear. He's not gonna have a spot on that team. He's probably want to go to a team that wants defense,
You
and a
know
team
what's
that I see Bear going to is probably Vancouver, back to Canada.
you know what's interesting, and you brought up Laine before, and I just want to say something really quickly. Patrick Laine was a point a game player this year, right? 56 games played, he had 56
Had a
points.
very good season this year.
He was good, and I think the problem with Laine and Columbus is that I don't know if Columbus is willing to pay him, and I think that with Laine, we've seen the ups and downs with Laine, right? We've seen the potential that he has, the second overall potential, this guy that can score 40 goals, and we know he's got it in him. He's shown it. The question becomes, are teams willing to pay for that, and what Laine are you going to get? If Laine is motivated like he was last season, you're getting a point-a-game player. If Laine is not motivated, you're getting a player that's going to be lazy and not going to play to the best of his ability. So I think with Columbus, that's going to be a question that they're going to have to ask themselves in terms of, are we paying this guy to keep producing for us? Does he want to be here? And if he wants to be here, how's this going to work and how much is he going to be worth? In terms of Ethan Bear, there's going to be teams interested. I think he could even end up back in Edmonton as a potential destination. But one team I've heard a lot of talk with as well has been, New Jersey, but has also been Montreal as well. And I think that he's a depth guy. I think he's a guy that you can bring in and put him into pretty much any team, and he'll thrive. I could see him going to Canada, maybe going to a team like Toronto as well. Looking for a cheap option on defense. Maybe a team even like the Boston Bruins, who already, they've already lost McAvoy and Grzelcyk this season. Maybe they bring in Ethan Bear as a way to kind of like help with the physicality and replace what Grzelcyk brought to the table. So I think I'm not saying
Well,
Ethan Bear
Boston,
better
the
than
way that
Grzelcyk.
the way they're going, it seems as if they're gonna be rebuilding. In
Yeah,
my
but you could
opinion.
still add a guy like Bear. I'm just,
Wants
because they
out
need
the Bear.
defense, need bodies.
We didn't even
Sorry.
mention Pasternak might be getting dealt too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's been rumors about that. He's not too happy with Sweeney right now. They don't have a really good relationship. They're supposed to be having a meeting sometime in the summer to discuss his future. But look, you have Bergeron, who's on the cusp of leaving or retiring. You have Marchand, who's up there in age, probably going to be nominee captain if Bergeron leaves. You have McAvoy, who's out long term. You have um also what's his name, Nick Foligno, where there's rumors that they might buy out his contract.
Yeah.
Tuukka Rask retired. you know um they did acquire Lindholm, but it's still not good enough for them on terms of defense. Grizzly, like you were saying before, he's out too. They're dealing with a lot of changes. They fired Bruce Cassidy. Now they're looking for an inexperienced coach. That a new face. They don't want to hire somebody from the quote unquote coaching carousel. They want someone with a fresh perspective, something like St. Louis, I'm guessing. They are in negotiations with David Quinn, who was the coach of the New York Rangers a couple years ago, or a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, before Gallant. So, I mean, look, they want a fresh perspective. So, I mean, Ethan Bear does make sense with Boston, I would say, because he is younger. But yeah, expect Boston to be a big player in terms of acquiring younger guys and shipping out some guys too, older guys.
Yeah.
Um, but in my opinion, in terms of all these rumors, I do not think that Josh Anderson and Brock Besser get traded unless the deal is too good to be true, because both those players are very valuable to their teams, and they need to get an offer that is going to sweep both general managers off their feet. But those two guys, I would say it's very unlikely they get traded unless the offer is too good to be true. Everyone else we mentioned, I think there's a high possibility they do.
I don't know. We always every year, it's trade rumors. Every year you hear trade rumors, and then they don't tend to end up happening, and it kind of sucks. It's not, but we'll see. I mean, look, the draft's coming up, free agency's coming up. Teams are trying to build their team for next season. I think there's going to be a lot of movement. I think Montreal is going to be active. I think New Jersey is going to be active. Buffalo is a team that I mentioned. I think they're going to be active. Vancouver too, and Philly as well. I think is another team that could be active. I think there's going to be some active teams this year, and I think more than usual there might be a lot more movement compared to recent years because I think there's teams that are starting to accept the fact that they're going to be rebuilding, and I think there are teams as well, especially cup contending teams that are going to want to improve their squad a little bit more and try to fight for a playoff spot. So I think this offseason is going to be one of the most entertaining ones. And it's going to be very
There's
interesting
a
to
lot of
see.
guys in their prime, a lot of
For
younger
sure.
guys. The older guys, there was not really much. I mean, you want to look at older guys, they're probably mostly in free agents. But if you want to, get a younger guy, it's gonna have to be through trade. And we have seen teams like New Jersey, Detroit, Buffalo, Columbus that are on the rise. They're moving past that rebuilding stage, and you're seeing teams on the decline like Pittsburgh, Boston. In terms of, I'm talking about playoff success. Like they're not able to pass the first round anymore. A lot of guys are leaving. There's going to be a lot of changes this year.
Yeah,
So um, there's
we'll
that
see.
as well. Dallas was another team. They just lost Radulov, who went back to the KHL. They're an older team. They have to build around guys like Robertson, Hintz. Oh my God, who is their goalie? Uh,
Ottinger.
Ottinger and Heiskanen on defense. So they're gonna have to do some changes there too. I just want to say quickly in terms of Anderson, he was connected to the Edmonton Oilers. Jeff Petry was connected to Philadelphia, Detroit,
Dallas.
um, Dallas, and there's also been rumors as well about Nashville. I don't know if that's legit or not,
I
but I
heard
mean,
Philly too.
yeah, I said Philly
Oh,
before.
Flyers. You just said
Yeah.
Flyers. True.
I think. Oh yeah, also Pittsburgh too. If they lose Chris Letang, apparently they want to trade for Jeff Petry as a replacement for him, which would be funny because there's been rumors that Letang might sign in Montreal. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of trade rumors. But if you guys have any mock trades for the offseason, make sure to write in the comment section below.
Yeah, we'd love to know.
Also, if there's any names that we didn't mention, we'd love to discuss that with you guys in the comment section below. But I'm pretty sure we covered everybody. And then there's also John Gibson, who was supposed to get traded at one point, and now he debunked it. And he's like, I would like the Ducks direction right now. I want to see the changes that they do. I want to be a part of their team moving forward. So that's another guy to get off the list. So I mean, look, there's always going to be rumors circulating. These names, those names, whatever, but it doesn't mean everyone's going to get traded. Sometimes the media just makes it just to get some views, on social media or on TV as well to garner interest, because we know that the offseason could be a very boring time because there's no hockey games, right? So they try to, hype up each team's fan bases and try to get them riled up to watch their content in terms of, what's going to happen with my team. Are they going to be big players or not? Like, it's always like that every year. And most of the time we do get disappointed. So we'll see if that's another situation if we're disappointed or not. But I think this year's going to be a lot different. I think it's going to be like last year, where there's going to be a lot of activity, especially the NHL like moving past that whole COVID era. But yeah, the cap space, the cap is increasing now, so that means some teams are going to have a lot more space in terms of making trades and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But guys, thank you once again for supporting us. Don't forget to like this video. We hope you enjoyed this video. There's obviously so much more we could talk about, but it's just going to be too long. And don't forget to share this with anyone that's interested with NHL rumors. And we'll see you on the next episode. Have a nice night, guys.